Before she knew the world, she knew the dark. Not the dark of the night sky, or the dark of the deep earth, or the dark of the cave at the back of the mountain where the light did not reach. The dark of the interior. The absolute and complete dark of existing inside the body of the Titan who had swallowed her before she had taken her first breath of the world's air, before she had felt the quality of the light on her face, before she had known anything at all of what the world was or what she was in it. She had been swallowed at birth. Kronos had received the prophecy from his parents, the prophecy that what he had done to his own father would be done to him by his own child, that the pattern of the overthrow was in the nature of the world, and could not be avoided by any act of will or power, only perhaps delayed by the removal of the children before any of them could grow into the force that the prophecy described. He had believed the delay was the same as the prevention. He had believed that the swallowing was the solution rather than the postponement of the thing it was trying to prevent. He was wrong, but the wrongness took time to express itself, and in the interval of the wrongness, Hera lived in the dark. She was not alone. This was the first and most important quality of the darkness, that it contained more than one presence, that the interior of the Titan held her siblings in the same complete and lightless condition. Hestia was there, the oldest, with the particular quality that would always be hers, the warmth, the quality of the held fire, the sense of the hearth that Hestia carried even in the place where there was no hearth and no fire and no warmth of the ordinary kind. Demeter was there with the quality of the fertile and the growing held in suspension, the earth goddess in her earliest form, existing in the interior dark, with the patience of the seed that had not yet found the soil. Poseidon was there, and Hades. She felt them in the quality of the dark, felt the ocean quality of Poseidon pressing against the interior in the way of water that had not yet found its edges, felt the deep and patient quality of Hades already developing the particular stillness that would characterize him across all the ages of his existence. They were all there, all five of them, held in the interior of the Father who feared them, in the particular and terrible way of the powerful who have been told that what they have produced will eventually exceed them. Hera developed in this dark. This is the thing that the later tradition did not always attend to, that the darkness was not simply a deprivation, not simply the absence of the world's qualities pressing in from outside. It was also a condition of formation, the place where the quality of her nature developed in the specific way that the darkness produced, rather than the way the world above would have produced it had she been born into the light. She developed the quality that would be her most fundamental characteristic, the quality of dignity. Dignity in the dark was the only dignity available. There was nothing in the interior of Kronos that reflected back to her the quality of her own significance. There was no court to attend, no throne to occupy, no beings whose recognition of her authority confirmed the authority itself. There was only the dark and the siblings, and the interior of the Time Titan, and in that condition the only sovereignty available was internal, the sovereignty of the being who knows what it is without requiring the world's confirmation of the knowing. She knew what she was. She knew it not as a proposition, not as the self-knowledge that came from the experience of the world and the reflection of the self in the world's response. She knew it as the most fundamental quality of her own being, the certainty that was prior to any experience of the world, the quality of the self that had formed in the dark and knew itself by being itself rather than by being seen. She was a queen, not yet, not in the formal sense, not in the sense of the throne and the court and the peacock and the regal sky above Olympus, but in the essential sense. The quality of the queen was present in her before the queenship, the way a mountain is present in the stone before the mountain has been named, the the way authority is present in a being before the authority has been exercised. She waited with the quality that the dark had given her, not the impatient waiting of a being who needed the world to arrive, not the anxious waiting of someone who feared the dark would be permanent, the waiting of a being who understood in the wordless way of the very young and the very dark, that what she was not dependent on what the world gave her, that the quality of the waiting was itself an expression of what she was, and therefore not a diminishment but a demonstration. Then the cup was given to Kronos. She felt the quality of the releasing before she experienced it, felt the change in the interior, the quality of the held thing becoming the released thing, the particular movement of the dark, shifting into something that was not yet light but was the approach of light, the threshold of the first experience of the world pressing toward her from the direction of the above. She rose through the releasing. She rose with the quality of what she had become in the dark, the dignity intact, the certainty intact, the particular quality of her nature that had formed in the interior, and was now meeting the world for the first time with the full force of what the interior had made her. The light arrived, and it was the first light she had ever known, and she received it with the full quality of a being who had been waiting for it, with the patience of the complete and the sovereign and the entirely undiminished. She breathed the world's air. It tasted of the sky and the earth and the particular quality of the world above Kronos's interior that she had never experienced, and that arrived now with the force of everything that had been absent for all the years of the dark. She stood in the light of the world, and the world received the quality of her standing in it, the presence of the queen in the world for the first time, the particular and unmistakable quality of Hera arriving in the light with all of the dark's formation in her, and none of the dark's diminishment. She looked at the sky. It was vast and bright and entirely itself. She felt the quality of her own nature meeting the quality of the world above, and what she felt was not wonder exactly. Wonder implied a gap between the self and the thing wondered at. What she felt was recognition. The world was large and she was equal to it. She had always known she would be. The world was large and she was equal to it, and the light was on her face for the first time, and the air of the world above moved through her with the quality of the first breath received by a being who had been waiting for it across all the years of the dark, and she stood in the quality of what she had become in the interior, and felt the world arrange itself around the fact of her presence in it. The seasons took her, the Horae, the goddesses of the ordered year, the daughters of Zeus and Themis, who had not yet been born when Hera was swallowed, but who existed now in the quality of the world that had continued its development while Kronos held his children in the dark. They came to her with the quality of beings whose nature was the order of the turning year, who understood the appropriate time for each thing and recognized in Hera the thing that the appropriate time had arrived for, which was the tending of the queen before the queen took her place. They brought her to Samos. The island received her with the particular quality of a place that had been made for exactly this purpose, not consciously, not by design, but in the way that certain places have a quality of rightness for certain beings. The way the forge was right for Hephaestus, and the sea was right for Poseidon, and the island of Samos, in the quality of its air and its particular light, was right for the development of the goddess who was going to be the queen of the sky. She learned the world. She learned it with the quality of attention she had developed in the dark, the absolute and unhurried attention of a being who had spent years in the condition of having nothing to attend to except the quality of her own existence, and who now had everything to attend to, and gave each thing the same full quality of that attention. She learned the sky in the aspect that was hers, not the storm and the thunder, which were Zeus's domain, but the quality of the sky at its most ordered and its most regal, the sky of the clear day, and the quality of the late afternoon light, and the particular color of the sky at the moment before the evening arrived. She learned the peacock. The peacock came to her in the way of things that find their proper owner, not by any deliberate seeking, but by the quality of the recognition that certain things have for certain beings, the recognition of the creature for the divine presence that was most completely its own. She looked at the peacock and felt the quality of what it was, the particular combination of the regal and the completely unashamed, the beauty that did not conceal itself or apologize for itself, but spread the full extraordinary quality of what it was in the full light of the world, without the self-consciousness that the later tradition would sometimes call vanity, but that was more honestly the quality of a thing being entirely itself without reservation. She understood it immediately. The peacock was the expression in the natural world of the quality she had developed in the dark, the dignity that did not require any confirmation from outside itself, the beauty that was not performed for an audience, but was simply the full expression of what the thing was. She received the peacock as her own, with the quality of the recognition rather than the acquisition, the understanding that this was hers not because she had taken it, but because it was the most complete natural expression of her own deepest quality. The cuckoo came later. The cuckoo arrived in the quality of the small and the ordinary, the bird that was not the peacock, not regal, not beautiful in the peacock's way, not the expression of the sovereign quality. The cuckoo was the bird that laid its eggs in other birds' nests, the bird of the borrowed place, the bird whose nature was the nature of the one who moved through the world by finding the spaces that others had made and making them their own. She did not yet know why the cuckoo mattered. She would learn. She developed her domains. Marriage was the center, not in the sense of being the most important of the things she was the goddess of. The center in the sense of being the thing from which all the other things radiated, the quality from which the other qualities of her nature took their meaning. She was the goddess of the sacred bond, the goddess of the vow that was made between two people in the quality of the fullest possible commitment, the vow that was not simply the expression of the current feeling, but the establishment of a permanent structure of loyalty and care, and the particular quality of the witnessed promise. She understood what the vow required. It required the full quality of what was being promised, not the partial commitment, not the conditional loyalty that would hold as long as the conditions were favorable. The full and unconditional quality of the genuine vow, the commitment that held not because the holding was easy, but because the holding was what the vow was. She was the goddess of this, and she understood it completely, understood it in the way of a being whose nature was the quality they were the goddess of, who did not simply oversee the domain, but was the domain in the most fundamental sense. She felt the quality of her authority developing, not the authority of force. She had force, had the divine power of the Queen of the Gods that was among the greatest forces in the world. But force was not the quality of her authority, was not the foundation of it. The authority of presence, the quality of a being whose nature was so completely and unmistakably itself that the beings around it arranged themselves in response to the presence rather than to the power. The authority of the thing that was so fully what it was that the world acknowledged it without being compelled to. She practiced this. She practiced it in the way of the developing goddess in the years before the marriage, in the quality of the attention she gave to the beings and the things around her, in the quality of the care she brought to the domain she was becoming the goddess of, in the particular expression of her nature that was beginning to understand its own full scope. She attended to the marriages of the mortal world. She felt them with the quality of the goddess of marriage, feeling the expressions of her domain. The quality of the vow being made, the quality of the commitment establishing itself between two beings, the particular quality of the moment when two people turned toward each other with the full force of their intention to hold the bond that they were making. She felt each one with the complete attention of the being whose nature was this quality, received each vow with the full weight of her understanding of what the vow was and what it required. She was present at all of them, not visibly, not as the divine presence making itself known in the ceremony, in the way that later stories sometimes depicted the gods manifesting at mortal events, present in the quality of the domain, present in the way that the goddess of a thing was always present in every expression of that thing, the way the sea was present in every wave, and the fire was present in every flame. The seasons moved through their cycle around her. She felt the year turning in the quality of her island, the spring with its particular quality of the world beginning again, the summer with its fullness, the autumn with the change that was also a completion, the winter with the quality of the held and the patient that she understood better than most beings in the world, because she had lived its extreme version in the interior of Kronos. She felt the year, and she felt her own nature in the year, the quality of the ordered and the cyclical, the quality of the thing that returned, and that the returning was not repetition, but the faithful expression of the nature that the cycle expressed. She was becoming what she was. She was becoming the queen before the queenship, the divine sovereign of the sky, and the sacred bond in the years of her formation on the island, in the quality of the season's care, and the peacock's regal company, and the particular quality of the Samos light on the surface of the sea in the late afternoon. Then something changed in the quality of the sky. She felt it before she understood it. The quality of the sky above the island shifting in a way that was not the ordinary shift of the weather, or the turning of the day. The quality of a presence in the sky that was not the sky's own quality, but something moving through the sky with the force and the particular character of the being who was the king of it. She felt him approaching. She stood in the quality of the Samos afternoon with the peacock at her feet, and the seasons around her, and the full development of her years of formation in every aspect of how she stood in the world. And she felt the quality of Zeus approaching with the full and complex awareness of a being who understood already something of what this approaching meant, and what it would require, and what it would give, and what it would cost. She did not move toward him. She waited in the quality of the queen, not the waiting of the uncertain or the hoping, but the waiting of the one who was entirely herself in her own place, and would receive what came to her place from that quality rather than from any diminishment of it. The sky was bright above, and she waited in the quality of the queen, and the sky was bright above the island, and the peacock moved at her feet with its regal and unhurried quality, and she felt the presence of Zeus approaching through the sky with the full and complex awareness of a being who understood already that what was coming was going to be the most defining thing in her existence, and who received that understanding with the same quality of the complete and the sovereign that she had brought to everything else. The storm came first, not the storm of Zeus's anger, not the directed force of the thunder that he used as the expression of his will. The storm of the weather, the ordinary storm of the afternoon sky that built with the quality of the season's heat and the sea's moisture, and the particular atmospheric conditions of the island, the storm that was simply the sky, doing what the sky did in the quality of the summer afternoon over the Aegean. The rain came with it. She felt the rain on the surface of the island, and she felt in the quality of the rain the particular quality of that specific storm, the feeling that the weather was not entirely the weather, that what was moving through the sky above her had something in it that was not only the ordinary force of the meteorological, but something more deliberate, something that was using the quality of the storm as a vehicle for the approach of something that needed a vehicle. Then she saw the cuckoo. It came to her in the quality of the small and the bedraggled, the bird that had been caught in the storm, the bird that was wet and shivering with the quality of the creature in distress, the bird whose ordinary unremarkable form was made more ordinary by the condition the storm had reduced it to. It came to her feet with the quality of the appeal, not demanding, not performing the appeal, simply present in the condition of the needing with the directness of the creature that had no resources left for anything except the simple fact of the need. She looked at it. She looked at it with the full quality of her attention, the same attention she gave to everything, the complete and unhurried attention of the being who was entirely present to what was in front of her. She looked at the small wet bird, and she felt the quality of it, the specific quality of the thing in distress, and she felt in that quality something that she could not yet name, but that was present in the quality of the looking, something that was not quite the ordinary feeling of the divine being for the small creature in need. She picked it up. She held it against her chest in the way of the one who receives what is cold, and offers the warmth of the body, the gesture that was as old as warmth itself, the holding of the small and cold thing against the larger warm thing, the body's offer of its own heat to the body that needed it. She held the cuckoo and felt the cold of it against her chest, and felt the small and rapid heartbeat of the bird in distress. Then it was not a bird. The transformation happened with the quality of all Zeus's transformations, not slowly, not with the gradual quality of the thing becoming something else through the visible stages of the change. Suddenly, completely, the small wet cuckoo becoming the king of the gods in the quality of the instant, the bedraggled bird becoming the full and extraordinary presence of Zeus in the space between one breath and the next. She was not surprised. This was the quality of what she had known and had not known in the looking at the bird, the knowledge that existed below the level of the articulated, the awareness that had been present in the quality of the attention she had given to the small wet thing at her feet. She had felt something in the quality of it. She had not named the feeling, but she had not been fooled in the way that the transformation was designed to fool, had not been purely the receiving end of a trick that she had not understood as a trick at all. She looked at him. She looked at him with the full quality of the queen, not with the softening of the surprised, not with the warmth of the purely one, with the complete and assessing attention of the being who was entirely herself, meeting the being who had approached her through the quality of the disguised and the dependent, and was now present in his own full form, and who needed to be seen clearly in that full form before anything else could honestly occur between them. He was beautiful. She received this with the honesty she gave to everything, the full quality of what he was, the particular quality of the king of the gods in the expression of his nature, the force and the brightness and the particular quality of the divine that was his and no one else's. She received it without the pretense that it was not what it was, without the false modesty of the being who refuses to acknowledge the quality of what is in front of them. He was beautiful, and he was also what he was. He was the king of the gods, and he had come to her in the form of a cuckoo in a storm, and she held in the quality of her attention both of those things simultaneously, the beauty and the approach, the force of his nature and the method of his arrival, the quality of the divine sovereign and the quality of the trick. He asked her to marry him. He asked with the quality of the king who was also in this moment genuinely the one who was asking, not commanding, not the autocratic declaration of the divine ruler whose decisions were simply the facts of the world, asking, with the quality of the being who understood that what he was asking required the genuine assent of the one he was asking. That the sacred marriage that he was proposing was not the kind of thing that could be declared into existence by his authority alone. She considered with the full quality of the being who understood what she was being asked, who understood the marriage in the depth of her understanding of what marriage was, the sacred bond, the full and unconditional commitment, the vow that held not because the holding was easy, but because it was what the vow required. She considered what the marriage to Zeus would be, what it would give and what it would cost, and what the quality of the sacred bond meant when it was the bond between the Queen of the Gods and the King of the Gods in the full and complex reality of who those two beings were. She understood the cost. She was the goddess of marriage. She understood the vow in the most complete possible way, and she understood in the quality of the clear-eyed assessment she brought to everything, that the vow she was being asked to make was a vow she would hold with the full quality of what she was, and that the one she was making it with would not always hold it with the same quality. She said yes. She said it with the full quality of the queen making the choice, not with the uncomplicated joy of the one who did not see what they were entering, not with the resigned quality of the one who had no real choice, with the complete and sovereign quality of the being who saw clearly and chose anyway, who understood the full scope of what she was committing to and committed to it with the full force of her nature, because the alternative was the smaller life, the life that had not entered the full complexity of the most significant thing available to enter. The marriage was made on Samos. It was made with the quality of the sacred marriage in its most complete and most original form. The Hieros Gamos, the holy union of the Sky King and the Queen, the union that was not only the marriage of two divine beings, but the model and the foundation of all marriages everywhere, the original expression of the sacred bond that every human marriage was the echo of. Gaia gave the golden apple tree. She gave it from the deep quality of the earth's own generosity. The golden tree with its immortal fruit arising from the earth as the wedding gift of the oldest presents to the newest and most significant of all the bonds that had yet been made. The tree was planted in the garden at the edge of the world, and the Hesperides were given the charge of its keeping. The daughters of the evening watching over the golden fruit in the garden that was the wedding gift of the earth. She stood in the quality of the new marriage. She stood with the full weight of what she had entered, with the full quality of the vow she had made, and what the vow meant and what the vow would require. She stood with the golden apple tree as the symbol of the earth's blessing on the union, and the sky above as the domain she now shared with the king of it, and the quality of the sacred bond settled around her like the particular quality of the sky at the moment of its most complete expression. She was the queen, not becoming, was. The marriage had completed what the years on Samos had been building toward, had given the full expression of her nature the context it required, had placed the sovereign quality she had developed in the dark, and on the island in the specific and regal setting of the Queen of Olympus beside the king. She held the vow. She held it with everything she was, and the sky above was the sky of the Queen of the Gods, and the golden tree was in its garden at the edge of the world, and the quality of the sacred bond was the most real and the most important thing in the world to the being who was its goddess, and who had just made it in its most complete and most consequential form. She held the vow with everything she was, and the golden tree was in its garden, and the sky above was the sky of the Queen of the Gods, and Hera took her place on Olympus with the full quality of the being who had been made for exactly this, not made in the sense of having been designed for a specific purpose by some external intention, but made in the sense of having developed across the dark and the island and the years of formation into the precise quality that the role required, and that the role required her specifically to fill. Her throne was beside his, not behind, not below, not the supplementary seat of the consort who derived their significance from the significance of the one they sat beside. Beside, the word that carried in it the full quality of what her position was and what it was not, the word that acknowledged the equality of the position while carrying in its honest plainness the truth that equality of position was not always equality of power, that the throne beside the throne was not the same as the throne, that being beside the king was not the same as being the king. She held this complexity without simplifying it. She was the queen. The quality of her authority on Olympus was genuine and large and entirely her own, not derived from Zeus, not the reflection of his power in the mirror of the consort's position. She commanded the respect of the divine court, through the force of what she was, through the particular quality of the sovereign presence that had been her most fundamental nature since the dark of the Titan's interior. When Hera spoke in the divine court, the gods listened with the quality of beings attending to something that deserved the full quality of their attention, not because she compelled them to attend, but because the quality of what she was made the attending natural. She learned Olympus. She learned it with the same quality of attention she had brought to everything. The complete and unhurried engagement of the being who understood that the place she was in was the place her full existence would be lived, and that the understanding of it deserved the full weight of her care. She learned the quality of the divine court, the gods in their various natures, moving through the space of the divine world with the ease of beings who were entirely the expression of what they were, each one a complete and specific force given the form of a divine presence. She attended to Ares. Ares was her son with Zeus, the god of war born from the marriage of the Sky King and the Queen, carrying in his nature the particular combination of his parents' qualities in the specific form that the combination produced. He was not the most comfortable of her children, not the easiest of the relationships in her divine family. He was loud in the way of the war god, direct in the way of the force that expressed itself through the clash of arms rather than through the quality of the considered and the complex. But he was hers, genuinely and completely hers, carrying in the quality of his passionate and sometimes undisciplined force the particular quality of Hera's own capacity for the committed and the fierce, the quality of the being who felt things fully and acted on the feeling with the full force of what they were. She loved him with the honest complexity of the love that knew its object clearly. She attended to Hephaestus. The story of Hephaestus and Hera was one of the most painful and most honest stories in the entire range of her mythology, and she held it with the same quality of honesty she held everything, without the softening that would have made it more comfortable and less true. She had looked at him at his birth, and she had found in him something that did not meet the standard of what she had expected, and she had acted on that finding in the way that she would spend the rest of her existence unable entirely to justify to herself. She had thrown him. The act was real, and she did not pretend otherwise, did not find in the complexity of the story a way to dissolve her responsibility for the specific thing she had done. She had looked at her child and she had found him insufficient, and she had thrown him from the mountain, and the throwing had marked him permanently. The lame god, the forge god, the god whose entire extraordinary existence had been shaped by the fall that she had caused. She carried this. She carried it in the quality of the being who understood what they had done, and could not undo it, and lived with the knowledge in the honest way of the one who did not manufacture the comfort of the false resolution. He had returned. He had made the throne that had held her, and had released her, and they existed on Olympus in the particular quality of the relationship that had been damaged at its origin, and that both of them, inhabited with the honesty of beings who understood what the damage was and did not pretend it had not occurred. She attended to Athena. Athena was not her daughter, was Zeus's daughter, born from Zeus's own head after the swallowing of Métis, carrying in her nature the quality of the wisdom that was Métis' nature and the force that was Zeus's. The relationship between Hera and Athena had the particular complexity of the relationship between the queen and the powerful daughter, who was not hers. The combination of the genuine respect that Hera had for the quality of what Athena was, and the particular difficulty of the position of the daughter, who was entirely her father's and not at all her mother's. She respected Athena. She respected her with the quality of the genuine, the recognition of the force and the intelligence and the particular quality of the goddess of wisdom, expressed in the full development of her nature. The respect was real, even where the relationship was complicated, even where the complication produced friction rather than warmth. She attended to the whole of the divine court. She attended to it with the quality of the queen, whose attention was the expression of her authority, the complete and regal awareness of the being who was responsible for the quality of the world she governed, who understood that the governance was not the issuing of commands, but the quality of the sustained and serious attention given to what was in her care. She felt the quality of the divine court around her, and she gave it the full weight of her presence and her understanding, and the particular kind of care that was the care of the one who was responsible, rather than the one who merely observed. Then there were the mortals. She felt the mortal world with the quality of the goddess of marriage, feeling the full range of what her domain expressed in the lives of the beings who lived in it. The marriages made and the marriages broken, the vows held and the vows betrayed, the quality of the sacred bond in all its human expressions, from the most complete and the most sustained to the most fragile and the most brief. She felt each marriage as an expression of her domain, received each vow with the full quality of her understanding of what the vow was and what it required. She protected them. She protected the marriages and the women within them with the force of the Queen of the Gods, committed to the protection of the thing she was the goddess of, not always gently, not always in ways that the later tradition found entirely admirable, with the full and sometimes fierce force of a being who understood that the sacred bond was the most important of all the things in her domain, and who would not allow its violation to go unaddressed when the addressing was in her power. She walked through Olympus in the quality of the queen. She walked with the peacock following at a distance, in the regal and unhurried way of the peacock that was entirely itself in whatever space it moved through. And the quality of her movement through the divine court was the quality of the sovereign in their place, the complete and settled authority of the being who was where they were supposed to be, doing what they were supposed to be doing, entirely themselves in the role that was theirs. The sky above Olympus was the sky of her domain, the ordered sky, the clear and regal sky of the queen's aspect, not the storm sky of Zeus's thunder, not the violent expression of the king's force, but the quality of the sky at its most complete and most settled, the sky of the late morning when the light was full and the air was clear, and the quality of the heaven expressed itself in the regal clarity of the ordered world. She sat in her throne. She sat in it with the quality of the queen entirely in her place. The full weight of what she was settled into the position that was hers. The dignity that had formed in the dark of the Titan's interior, fully expressed now in the quality of the divine sovereign on her throne beside the throne of the king. The divine court moved around her, and she held it in her attention, complete, regal, entirely present, the queen of the gods in the quality of her authority at its most settled and most complete, attending to the world she governed with the full force of everything she had become, across all the years of the dark and the island and the marriage, and the long complex life of the Queen of Olympus. She was entirely herself, and the sky was hers. The sky was hers, and the throne was hers, and the quality of the Queen's authority was settled around her in its most complete expression, and she attended to the divine court with the full weight of her presence and her understanding. And the world moved through the quality of the Olympian age, with the gods in their places and the mortals in their lives, and the sacred bond present in the world as her domain, as the expression of what she was the goddess of. Then Zeus looked elsewhere. She felt it the way she felt everything, completely, with the full quality of her attention giving her the exact and honest perception of what was true, rather than the softened version that would have been more comfortable to receive. She felt the quality of his attention moving away from the center of what they were, and toward something that was outside it, felt it with the particular sensitivity of the being who was the goddess of the sacred bond, and therefore felt the quality of the bond in the most direct and the most unmediated way, the way a musician with perfect pitch feels the note that is wrong not as information but as the immediate and physical quality of the wrongness in the air. It was Io first. Io was a priestess of Hera. This was the specific and bitter quality of it, that the first was not a stranger but a woman in her own service, a mortal woman who had come to her temple with the quality of the devotee, and who had received in the temple not the protection of the goddess she served, but the attention of the goddess's husband. She felt the quality of what had happened with the full weight of her understanding of what the sacred bond required, and what it meant for the one who had made it to move against it in exactly the place that should have been most protected. She went looking. She went with the quality of the queen, whose authority had been violated, in the specific and ironic way of the violation occurring in her own domain, moving through the world with the force of the divine sovereign, whose attention had been directed toward a specific point, and who was going to arrive at that point with the full weight of what she was. She found a white cow. The white cow was in a meadow with the quality of the innocent and the ordinary. The large white animal grazing in the grass with the apparent quality of the thing that was simply what it appeared to be. A cow in a meadow, unremarkable. The ordinary presence of the domestic animal in the ordinary landscape. She looked at it, and she felt the quality of what it actually was, felt the particular quality beneath the surface of the animal form. The quality that was not the quality of the cow, but the quality of the mortal woman in the form the cow had been imposed on her. She asked for the cow as a gift. She asked with the quality of the queen who understood the game that was being played, and who played it with the full force of her intelligence, not with the rage that the later tradition sometimes attributed to her, not with the undignified fury of the simply wronged, with the cold and precise quality of the sovereign, who understood the situation exactly and used the tools available to her with the same completeness that she brought to everything else. She asked for the cow, and Zeus could not refuse without revealing what the cow was, and the refusal of the gift would have been the admission of the thing that was being concealed. He gave her the cow. She sent Argos to watch it. Argos Panoptes, the 100-eyed giant, the being whose eyes did not all sleep at once, who watched with the quality of the surveillance that never entirely ceased, who was the most complete watcher available in the world. She placed Argos at the side of the white cow with the quality of the queen, who had found the most effective instrument for the specific task, and had deployed it with the full force of her authority. It was not enough. Zeus sent Hermes. Hermes came with his flute and his quality of the movement between states, the god of the threshold and the transition using the gift of his nature. The music that moved through the awareness of the watcher like water moving through stone, filling the spaces between the attentions. the particular quality of the sound that found its way into the 100 eyes one by one and closed them in the order of their closing until all 100 were closed, and Argos slept and the cow was freed. She felt the loss of Argos. She received it with the quality of honest grief, not performed grief, not the theatrical expression of the divine being registering a loss. The genuine and specific grief of the queen for the faithful servant who had done what she had asked with the full quality of his extraordinary nature, and who had been overcome not by inadequacy, but by the force of a divine opponent who was not willing to be stopped. She placed his eyes in the peacock's tail. She took the eyes of Argos, and she placed them in the tail of the peacock, each eye a perfect circle of color in the extraordinary spread of the tail's display, the 100 watching eyes made permanent in the feathers of the bird that was most completely her own. The peacock's tail was the memorial of Argos, the transformation of the watching that had been overcome into the watching that could not be overcome. The eyes that had been closed by Hermes's music now opened forever in the quality of the regal display. She watched Io go. She watched with the quality of the honest and the assessing, not with the satisfaction of the successfully revenged, because she had not been successfully revenged. The outcome was not what she had sought. The cow was free, Argos was dead, and the situation was what the situation was, which was not what the sacred bond required it to be, and which was not within her power to change by any force she possessed. Then there was Leto. Leto was carrying Zeus's children, the twins who would be Apollo and Artemis, the children of the king of the gods by the Titaness, who had the particular quality of the gentle and the devoted, who moved through the world with none of the threatening force of the beings who produced more acute anxiety in the queen of the gods, but who was carrying the children of the vow-breaker, and was therefore the focus of the same force that Io had drawn. She pursued Leto across the world. She pursued her with the decree that no land under the sun would give her shelter for the birth, the decree of the queen of the gods that had the force of the divine authority behind it, the force that made the lands of the world refuse the Titaness as she moved through them, seeking the place where the birth could happen. She pursued with the quality of the force she had, which was the force of the queen's authority expressed in the only direction available to it in this specific situation. Delos received Leto, the floating island, the island that was not fixed to the ground, and therefore was not land under the sun in the sense the decree had meant, the island that found in the technicality of its own nature the space that the decree had not closed. She felt the quality of this, felt Delos receiving Leto with the particular quality of the world finding the gap in what she had established, the decree that had been as complete as she could make it proving not quite complete enough. Apollo and Artemis were born. She received this with the quality of the honest and the clear-eyed, the children born, the situation what it was, the sacred bond having failed to hold in the direction that the bond required it to hold. She received it not with the dissolution of her grief or the resolution of her anger, but with the quality of the being who had done what was in her power, and found that what was in her power was not always equal to what the situation required. She felt the grief. This is the quality that deserves the most careful attention, the grief beneath the anger, the grief that the anger was the expression of, the grief that was present in every act she directed against the lovers and the children of the faithless husband. She was the goddess of marriage. She was the goddess of the sacred bond. She was the being whose entire nature was the quality of the full and unconditional commitment, and she was bound to a being who did not hold the bond with the same quality she held it. The grief was not simple jealousy. The later tradition was wrong about this, or rather, the later tradition was incomplete about this, in the way that the simplest reading of a complex thing is always incomplete. The jealousy was real. She would not have been honest if she had claimed it was not present, would not have been the clear-eyed being she was if she had softened the feeling into something more dignified. But beneath the jealousy was something larger and more painful. The grief of the goddess of marriage having the most sacred thing she was the goddess of violated repeatedly by the one who was supposed to be the most complete expression of it. She held the grief with the quality of her nature, not dissolved in it, not overcome by it, not the being whose grief had become the whole of what she was, the queen holding the grief in the quality of the queen, completely, honestly, without the pretense that it was not there, and without the surrender to it that would have reduced her to less than what she was. The sky above was still hers. She was still the queen. The vow was still the vow, held by her with the full quality of what she had always given it, held on her side with the absolute completeness of the being whose nature was the holding of the sacred bond. And the holding was both the most painful thing about her existence and the most fundamental expression of what she was. She held it. She had always held it. She would always hold it. She held the vow, and the grief was what it was, and the sky was still hers, and she was still the queen. And the quality of her existence on Olympus continued in the way of all existences that contain both the painful and the sovereign simultaneously, not resolved into one or the other, not the grief dissolving the sovereignty, or the sovereignty pretending the grief was not present, but both fully real and fully hers, and held in the same quality of the complete and honest attention she gave to everything. She turned her attention to Jason. This was the quality of her power that the later tradition most consistently underestimated. The quality of the genuine patron, the goddess in the full expression of her protective and her generous nature, the divine being whose favor was among the most powerful forces in the world when it was freely and fully given. The tradition remembered her as the obstacle, as the force that opposed and pursued and punished. It did not always remember that she was also this, the goddess whose full and committed attention given to a mortal produced a quality of divine support that exceeded what most mortals had ever received from any divine being. Jason had earned it honestly. He had come to her at a river crossing in the form of an old woman. She had taken the form of the needing, the vulnerable, the one who required help to cross the water. The test of the quality of the young man's character expressed in the specific and ordinary form of the encounter on the road. He had carried her across the river with the quality of the genuinely helpful, not the performed helpfulness of the one who suspected a divine test and was behaving well for the benefit of the one who might be watching, but the simple and direct helpfulness of the young man who saw the old woman who needed help and helped her. He lost his sandal in the crossing. The sandal was taken by the mud of the river, in the quality of the ordinary accident of the crossing, pulled from his foot by the grip of the wet ground as he waded through the water with the old woman on his back. He arrived on the other bank with one sandal and the quality of the man who had done what the doing required, and had lost something in the doing, and was not diminished by the loss. She revealed herself. She revealed herself with the quality of the divine patron acknowledging what had been given, and receiving it into the bond of the divine favor, the particular and complete quality of the goddess of the sacred bond, applying that quality not only to the marriage, but to the bond of the patron and the hero, the bond of the divine commitment to the mortal who had earned the commitment through the honest expression of their character. She gave him her full attention, and the full attention of Hera was among the most significant forces in the world. She moved through the Argonautica with the quality of the patron at the fullest expression of the patronage, not the occasional intervention, not the passive favor that waited for things to go wrong and then corrected them. the active and committed presence of the divine sovereign, engaged on behalf of the mortal she had chosen, moving through the world with the full force of her authority in the service of the quest. She moved rivers. She did this in the literal sense, moved the courses of the rivers that the Argo needed to navigate, adjusted the geography of the world in the small and specific ways that the journey required, used the quality of her authority over the sky and the ordered world to ensure that the conditions for the quest were the conditions that the quest needed. She did it with the quality of the patron, who understood that the hero's success was the expression of what she had committed to, and who brought everything she had to the commitment. She moved the hearts of kings. She moved through the courts of the mortal world with the quality of the divine sovereign, whose presence in a place changed the quality of the decision-making in that place. The king who found himself inclined to help the Argonauts finding himself inclined, because the queen of the gods had brought the quality of her attention to bear on the inclination and had moved it in the direction that the quest required. She did this not through compulsion, but through the particular quality of her authority, the authority of presence rather than force, the quality of the thing that arranged the world around it, not by commanding the arrangement, but by being what it was. She worked with Athena. They worked together in the Argonautica, with the quality of two very different divine beings, finding the common purpose that allowed their different natures to operate toward the same end. Athena brought the wisdom and the craft, the quality of the goddess of intelligence, applied to the specific and technical challenges of the quest, the navigation and the building and the problem-solving. Hera brought the patronage and the weight of the divine sovereign's committed attention, the quality of the queen's authority in the service of the protection of the hero she had chosen. The combination was formidable. She felt the quality of the work with the particular satisfaction of the sovereign whose full power was being expressed in a direction that was genuinely and freely chosen, not the reactive power of the being who was responding to a violation, not the constrained power of the being who was working within the limits that the structure of the divine world imposed. The freely given power of the patron, fully committed to the hero she had chosen to protect. Medea complicated it. Medea was the daughter of Aedes, the king of Colchis, and she was a priestess of Hecate and a witch of the most extraordinary quality, a woman whose gifts were the gifts of the threshold, the knowledge of the edge and the transformation and the chemical arts of the deep knowing. She fell in love with Jason with the full force of her nature, which was not a moderate nature, which expressed itself in the total and consuming quality of the feeling rather than the managed and the considered. Hera worked with Aphrodite. She went to Aphrodite with the quality of the queen, making a specific request of a specific divine being whose nature was suited to the specific requirement. Not comfortable, not the visit of equals whose relationship was entirely without complication, but the honest and direct request of the being who understood what was needed and went to the one who could provide it. She asked Aphrodite to cause Medea to love Jason, to direct the force of the goddess of love toward the specific purpose of the quest, to ensure that the witch's extraordinary gifts were available to the hero who needed them. It worked. Medea's love for Jason was the condition of his success, the golden fleece taken through the combination of the hero's force and the witch's knowledge. The knowledge available because the feeling was real, and the feeling was real because the Queen of the Gods had understood what the quest required, and had gone to the goddess of love with the directness of the patron, who would use every tool available in the service of the commitment she had made. She felt the quality of the completed quest. She felt it with the satisfaction of the patron whose hero had succeeded. The particular quality of the divine being, who had committed the full force of their attention and their authority to a mortal's endeavor, and had seen that endeavor succeed. Not the satisfaction of the vicarious glory, not the taking of the credit for what the hero had done, the satisfaction of the commitment honored. The quality of the bond between the patron and the hero having held with the same completeness that she brought to all bonds, having produced what the bond was supposed to produce. This was her power at its fullest. This was the quality that the stories did not always find. The Queen of the Gods, in the full and generous expression of what the Queen of the Gods actually was, when the full and generous expression was what the situation called for. Not the obstacle, not the pursuer, not the force of the divine resentment directed at the mortal who had drawn the wrong kind of divine attention. The patron, the protector, the sovereign whose commitment to the one she had chosen was as complete and as unconditional as her commitment to the sacred bond itself. The commitment held with the full force of everything she was, the force of the Queen of the Gods, brought to bear in the service of the freely given and fully honored bond of the divine patron and the mortal hero. She felt the quality of the freely given power. She held it in the quality of the honest attention she gave to everything. The knowledge of what she was when she was most completely herself. The knowledge of the full range of what she was capable of when the capability was directed by the freely chosen commitment rather than by the reactive force of the violated and the grieving. She was this. She was also the other. Both were true and both were hers, and she held them in the same quality of the honest and the complete attention. The patron and the pursuer, the protector and the force of consequence, the goddess of the sacred bond in all the ways the sacred bond expressed itself in the divine and the mortal world. The sky above was the sky of the Queen, and the Queen was entirely, completely, honestly herself in all the complexity of what that being was. The Queen was entirely herself in all the complexity of what that being was, and the sky above was hers in the quality of the ordered and the regal, and the patronage of Jason had expressed the full and generous quality of her power at its most freely given, and she held the full range of what she was, the patron and the pursuer, the protector and the force of consequence, the Queen whose existence contained all of these things simultaneously, and who was diminished by none of them. Then there was Heracles. She had known he was coming in the way. She knew things that were part of the pattern of her existence, not as a surprise arriving from outside the quality of her awareness, but as the thing that had been approaching for long enough that its arrival was not unexpected, only fully present in its weight for the first time when it arrived. The child of Zeus and Alcmene, the mortal woman of Thebes, the child whose existence was itself the most direct and the most personal of all the violations of the sacred bond that she had ever been required to receive. Not because Alcmene was the most significant of Zeus's lovers. She was not, in the simple sense of the divine politics of the matter, because of what the child was going to be, because Zeus had made of this specific child something that exceeded all the others, had declared before the birth that the child born that day of the lineage of Perseus would be the greatest of heroes, would have the authority of the High King over the surrounding peoples, had invested in this specific child a quality of divine attention and divine intention that elevated the violation of the bond into something that was more than the ordinary pattern of the faithless. He had made this child special. She felt the quality of this with the full force of her nature. The being who was the goddess of the sacred bond, receiving the news that the bond had been violated, not merely in the ordinary terrible way of the pattern she had been living with across all the ages of the marriage, but in the specific and elaborated way of a violation that was also a declaration, that was also the King of the Gods announcing the specialness of the child of the union he had no right to make. She acted before the birth. She sent Eileithyia, the goddess of childbirth, her daughter, the divine being whose presence at a birth was the condition of the birth happening in the ordinary way, and whose absence was the condition of the birth being delayed. She sent Eileithyia away from Alcmene, and she caused Alcmene's labor to be held in suspension. The birth that should have been happening not happening, the child waiting in the delay that she had imposed with the authority of the queen whose domain included the quality of the ordered and the appropriate time. She caused Eurystheus to be born first. She accelerated the birth of Eurystheus, the child born of the same lineage of Perseus, born on the same day, born first rather than second by the intervention of the queen's authority. The prophecy was fulfilled in the letter that she had shaped. The child of Perseus born first that day was Eurystheus, and Eurystheus was the king whose authority over Heracles the prophecy established. It was not enough. The child was born. Heracles came into the world with the quality of the extraordinary, the divine parentage present in every aspect of what he was, the force and the beauty and the particular quality of the hero whose destiny was written in the combination of what he had inherited from his divine father and what the conditions of his life were going to require him to become. She sent the serpents. She sent them to the cradle where the infant lay with his twin brother Iphicles, two serpents in the dark of the nursery, sliding through the quality of the night toward the cradle where the child slept. She sent them with the full force of her intention, with the quality of the queen directing the most direct available instrument at the most immediate available target. The infant killed them. He killed them with his bare hands. The infant who was not yet walking, not yet speaking, not yet any of the things that the developed human being was, killing the divine queen's serpents with the bare and extraordinary force of his infant hands, with the complete unconcern of a being who had encountered something threatening and had removed it with the most direct means available. She felt the quality of this. She felt it with the full honesty of her perception. The serpents sent and the serpents killed, and the infant in the cradle with the dead serpents in his hands, and the twin brother crying at the other end of the cradle, and the quality of what she had done and what the doing had produced. She felt it with the complex and honest quality of the being who had acted with the full force of her intention, and found that the full force of her intention was not sufficient for the specific task. She drove him to madness. This was the darkest act, the act that the story required the most careful and the most honest attention to, the act that could not be softened into something more comfortable without becoming dishonest about what it was. She sent the madness that descended on the hero in the fullness of his adult life, in the time when he had the family that the heroes of the mortal world built around them, the wife and the children who were the expression of the mortal version of the sacred bond that was her domain. The madness made him destroy what he loved. She held this. She held it with the full quality of the honest and the uncomfortable. The knowledge that she had done this, that the madness was hers, that the deaths of the wife and the children of Heracles were the consequence of her action. She did not resolve this into something easier. She did not find in the complexity of the divine-mortal relationship a framework that dissolved her responsibility for the specific thing she had done. She held it in the quality of the being who saw clearly and held what they saw without the comfort of the softening. The labors followed, the 12 labors that Eurystheus imposed, the work of atonement that the oracle prescribed for the hero whose madness had destroyed his family, the extraordinary series of impossible tasks that the hero accomplished with the full force of what he was. She was the obstacle across many of them, the divine force that made the already impossible more difficult, the queen of the gods applying the full weight of her authority to ensure that the hero's path was as hard as the path could be. She felt the quality of her own opposition as she maintained it. She felt it with the honesty that was her most fundamental quality. The complex feeling of the being who was doing what they were doing for reasons that were real, and who was also aware of the quality of what they were doing and what it was producing. She felt the quality of the opposition across the long sequence of the labors. The hero moving through the impossible tasks with the extraordinary combination of the divine force of his inheritance and the mortal quality of his determination. The quality of the being who was shaped by the opposition into something that exceeded what he would have been without it. She understood this. She understood it in the quality of the honest and the uncomfortable. The understanding that the opposition she had directed at Heracles was also the condition of his greatness, that without the labors there was no apotheosis, that the hero whose name was the glory of Hera was the hero shaped by her opposition into the most complete expression of what a mortal hero could be. She held this understanding not as a justification. It was not a justification. The deaths were real, and the madness was real, and her responsibility for both was real. But it was true. The name had always been the truth beneath the story. Heracles, the glory of Hera, not the glory in the sense of the tribute paid to the one who had helped. The glory in the sense of the full expression of the quality that bore the name. The hero who was the most complete and most extraordinary expression of the mortal heroic quality, shaped by the conditions of his life into that expression. The conditions of his life being in significant part the conditions that she had imposed. The labors completed, she felt the quality of the completion across the long sequence of the extraordinary work. The Nemean lion and the Lernaean hydra and the Augean stables and the Stymphalian birds and the Cretan bull and the mares of Diomedes and the girdle of Hippolyta and the cattle of Geryon and the apples of the Hesperides and the capture of Cerberus, the full and extraordinary range of the impossible, accomplished with the quality of the hero whose opposition had shaped him into the being who could accomplish it. He became divine. He came to the end of his mortal life, and he crossed the threshold into the divine in the quality of the apotheosis, the mortal becoming immortal, the hero becoming a god, the extraordinary life of the most extraordinary of the mortal heroes, resolving into the permanent and divine quality of the being who had completed what the mortal life had required. She gave him Hebe, her daughter, the goddess of youth, the quality of the eternal freshness and the divine vitality given as the wife of the hero who had been the subject of her opposition across all the ages of his labors. She gave Hebe to Heracles with the quality of the queen, making the gesture that was the most complete and the most honest available to her. The giving of her own daughter, the most personal of all possible gifts, the acknowledgement through the gift of the full complexity of the relationship that had defined his existence. It was not an apology. She was not a being who apologized in the simple sense, who found in the formal expression of the apology a resolution of the complex and the real. It was something more honest than an apology, the acknowledgement made in the form of the action rather than the word. The giving that said what needed to be said, without the pretense that the saying resolved what the giving could not entirely resolve. He accepted it. The reconciliation was real. She felt the quality of it with a full awareness of her honest perception, felt the quality of the relationship between the Queen of the Gods and the hero who bore her name, arriving at the form it had always been moving toward across all the ages of the opposition and the laboring. Not the easy resolution, not the dissolution of all the complexity into the simple warmth of the ending reconciled, the honest one, the reconciliation that held the full weight of what had happened and found in that weight not the reason for the irresolution, but the foundation of the genuine thing, the thing that was real, because it had been earned through the full and terrible and extraordinary quality of everything that had preceded it. She felt the quality of his name, Heracles, the glory of Hera. She held it in the full honesty of everything it contained. She held the name in the full honesty of everything it contained, and the reconciliation with Heracles was what it was, real and earned and carrying the full weight of everything that had preceded it. And the sky above was the sky of the Queen of the Gods, and the divine court moved through the quality of the Olympian age, and she was the queen of it, entirely and completely, in all the complexity of what that being was. Then she conspired against Zeus. This is the episode that the tradition did not always know what to do with. The Queen of the Gods, the goddess of the sacred bond, the being whose most fundamental nature was the quality of the vow and the commitment, participating in a conspiracy to overthrow the king she was bound to. The tradition sometimes softened it, sometimes passed over it quickly, sometimes treated it as the aberration of the being who had temporarily exceeded the limits of what was appropriate. It was not an aberration. It was the most honest and the most complete expression of the full complexity of what she was. The queen who held the vow and was also the queen who had real power and real intelligence and real understanding of the quality of the rule that the vow had bound her to. The queen who could see clearly what Zeus's rule was and what it cost and what it required of those who existed within it, and who found in that seeing the quality of the rebellion that was not the simple impulse of the resentful, but the considered response of the sovereign intelligence to the reality of what the divine world had become. Zeus's rule had its qualities. She held this honestly. The acknowledgement that the rule was not simply tyranny, not simply the exercise of the autocratic force of the most powerful being in the world, without the qualities that made the power something more than mere force. He had qualities that were genuinely the qualities of the king, the force and the intelligence and the capacity for the long view that the governance of the divine world required. She did not reduce him to less than he was in order to justify the conspiracy, but the rule had its costs. The faithlessness was part of it, the repeated violation of the bond that was the foundation of the ordered world. The King of the Gods demonstrating through the pattern of his behavior that the sacred bond applied to everyone except the one who was most bound by it, the one whose marriage was the model and the foundation of all marriages. She held this not as the primary cause of the conspiracy, but as part of the whole. One quality of the rule among the several qualities that had accumulated across the long ages of the Olympian order into the weight that the conspiracy expressed. The autocratic quality was another part. Zeus ruled with the particular quality of the being who had won the world through the force of his own power, and who governed it with the understanding that the winning was the justification for the governing, that the quality of the power that had established the order was the quality of the authority that maintained it. He consulted when consultation suited him. He listened when listening was what he had already decided to do. He was the King of the Gods, and the King of the Gods was what he was, and what he was the final authority on every question that mattered. The Queen of the Gods had opinions about the questions that mattered. She had always had them, had always brought the full force of her intelligence and her understanding to the questions of the divine governance, and had found in the bringing that her opinions were received with the quality of the court that acknowledged the authority of the queen, while understanding that the authority of the king superseded it on the questions that the king had decided to decide himself, which was the questions that mattered. She went to Poseidon. She went with the quality of the queen who had decided that the decision had been made. The long consideration completed, the weight of the accumulated evidence of the quality of the rule assessed with the full force of her honest perception, the conclusion arrived at not through the sudden impulse of the grieved and the resentful, but through the slow and complete process of the sovereign intelligence reaching the sovereign judgment. Poseidon received her with the quality of the god of the sea receiving the queen of the gods. The complexity of the relationship between the two great siblings who had shared the dark of Kronos' interior and who had moved in very different directions since the release, who had the bond of the shared beginning and the complication of the different natures and the different domains and the different relationships to the authority of the king they were now conspiring against. He was willing. She went to Athena. Athena received her with the quality of the goddess of wisdom receiving the proposal, with the intelligence that was her most fundamental quality. The full and clear assessment of the proposal and its likelihood of success, and its risks and its potential consequences. The wisdom that was not simply the intelligence of the calculation, but the intelligence of the being who understood the full scope of what was being proposed. Athena was willing. They came to Zeus while he slept. He slept with the quality of the most powerful being in the world and the quality of the rest. The particular quality of the divine sovereign, whose confidence in the security of his own position was so complete that the vulnerability of sleep was not experienced as vulnerability, but as simply the natural rest of the king who was king even in his sleeping. He slept, and the three of them came to him with the quality of the conspiracy fully prepared, with the chains they had brought for exactly this purpose. They bound him. They bound the king of the gods with the chains, the rawhide bonds that held him in the quality of the bound, the most powerful being in the world made helpless by the combination of the surprise and the quality of the binding. The king of the gods, lying bound in the quality of the overnight conspiracy that had worked in the specific and limited sense of having achieved the binding. He woke bound. She felt the quality of the moment. The king of the gods waking to the quality of the bound. The moment of his awareness of what had been done, expressing itself in the particular quality of the divine sovereign, finding himself in the condition of the constrained. She felt it with the complex quality of the being who had participated in the producing of this moment, and who received the quality of its arrival with the full and honest awareness of what it was. It did not last. Thetis brought Briareos, the Nereid, who had her own complex relationship with Zeus's debt, who had called on the hundred-handed one from the deep to come to the aid of the king of the gods, who had brought the most overwhelming of all the forces available in the world to the side of the bound king with the quality of the divine being, who understood what the balance of power in the Olympian world required, and who acted to maintain it. Briareos untied the knots, the 100 hands working at the rawhide bonds with the quality of the overwhelming force, applied to the specific and technical task of the untying, each hand attending to a different knot, the 100-handed one making short work of what the three conspirators had believed was the sufficient binding. Zeus was free. She felt the quality of his freedom arriving. The awareness of the king of the gods freed from the constraint, the particular quality of the most powerful being in the world, returning to the quality of the unconstrained with the force of the freed thing finding its full expression again. She felt it, and she felt in it the shape of what was coming. He was furious. His fury had the quality of the sky in the full expression of the storm, not the directed and considered anger of the king making a judgment, but the elemental force of the sky expressing itself through the medium of the divine sovereign's rage. The thunder and the quality of the absolute authority violated finding its response in the full and overwhelming force of what Zeus was, when the full force was not managed by the considerations that ordinarily managed it. He hung her. He hung the queen of the gods from her wrists with golden chains. The beautiful chains, the quality of the punishment that used the precious material for the instrument of the humiliation, the gold that was the material of the divine used as the binding of the divine queen. He hung her between the earth and the heaven, the queen of the sky suspended in the sky that was her domain, hanging in the space between the two great realms with the anvils attached to her feet. The anvils were the weight. She felt the weight of them. The pull of the iron against her wrists through the golden chains, the quality of the hanging that was also the quality of the display, the punishment that was also the public expression of the king's authority reasserted over the queen who had conspired against it. She hung in the sky between the earth and the heaven, and the gods of Olympus looked up at her, and the quality of the looking was the quality of the divine court, attending to the demonstration of what happened to the beings who moved against the king. She did not weep. This is the quality that deserves the full weight of the attention. That she did not weep, did not perform the submission that would have been the expected response to the humiliation, did not give Zeus the quality of the broken that would have been the full achievement of the punishment's purpose. She hung in the golden chains with the anvils on her feet, and she was the queen of the gods in the quality of the queen who had been punished, and who was still the queen. The dignity held, not as a performance, not as the deliberate and willed maintenance of the appearance of the dignity that was actually broken, the genuine article, the quality that had formed in the dark of Kronos' interior when dignity was the only thing available, and that had never since then been entirely dependent on the external conditions for its existence. The dignity that did not require the throne or the court or the absence of the golden chains. She hung in the sky, and the sky was still hers, not in the sense of her authority being undiminished. It was diminished, was the diminishment that the hanging expressed, and that the divine court observed, and that the king had intended, but in the sense of the quality of her relationship with the sky that was deeper than the authority. The quality of the being who was the queen of the ordered sky in the most fundamental sense, the sense of the nature rather than the position. The other gods did not help her. She felt their not helping with the quality of the honest and the clear-eyed. The divine court attending to the punishment of the queen with the quality of the beings who understood that the intervention on behalf of the punished was the extension of the conspiracy, and who were not willing to extend the conspiracy into the territory of the directly defying the freed and furious king. She waited with the quality she had developed in the dark of the Titan's interior, the quality of the waiting that was not the waiting of the defeated, but the waiting of the one who understood that what was happening was what was happening, and that the endurance of what was happening was the form of the resistance available in this specific moment, the resistance not of the fighting back but of the not being broken. Zeus released her eventually. He released her with the quality of the king whose point had been made, the punishment having served its purpose of the demonstration, the queen having hung in the sky long enough for the divine court to have fully received the message about the limits of the conspiracy and the nature of the response to the exceeding of those limits. He released her with the condition, the oath of the gods who had participated in the conspiracy to not move against him again. She swore the oath. She swore it with the quality of the being who swore, completely, with the full force of the being whose nature was the sacred bond, giving her word in the quality of the vow. She swore and she held the oath with the same quality she held all vows, completely, without reservation, with the full force of her nature committed to the thing she had committed to. She came down from the sky. She came down with the quality of the queen returning to her place from the place of the punishment, not with the triumph of the restored, not with the diminishment of the defeated, with the complex and honest quality of the being who had conspired and been punished and had endured the punishment, and had returned to the quality of the queen, who was still the queen, still the goddess of the sacred bond, still the being whose nature was the dignity that the dark had given her, and that the golden chains had not taken. She sat in her throne. The divine court received her return with the quality of the court attending to the return of the queen. The gods who had watched her hang in the sky, now watching her take her place beside the throne of the king, with the quality of the divine world, readjusting to the new configuration of what had happened and what it meant. She was marked by it. She was marked in the way that all the most significant experiences marked the beings who went through them. Not visibly, not in any way that the external eye of the divine court could see and point to. In the internal quality of the experience, added to the full accumulation of what she was, the hanging in the sky becoming part of the texture of the queen's existence, part of the full and complex range of what she had been through, and what she had endured, and what she had remained despite the enduring. The sky above was bright. She sat in her throne, and the sky was the sky of the Queen of the Gods, and the divine court moved in its Olympian quality around her. And she was the queen who had conspired and been bound and had hung in the golden chains, and had returned, and was still the queen, still the goddess of the sacred bond, still the being whose most fundamental quality was the dignity that no punishment had ever entirely reached. She breathed the air of Olympus. She was still here. She was still here, and the sky was bright above Olympus, and the throne was hers, and the divine court moved in its Olympian quality around her, and she had been through the dark of the Titan's interior, and the years of the island, and the marriage, and the grief, and the patronage, and the opposition, and the golden chains. And she was still the queen, still entirely and completely herself, and the still here-ness was not the diminished still here-ness of the being who had survived, but the full and sovereign still here-ness of the being who had lived. She sat in the quality of the long view. She had the long view in the way that only the beings who had been through the full range of what existence offered had the long view. Not the long view of the observer who had watched from a safe distance, not the long view of the being who had managed their existence carefully enough to avoid the most difficult of the things that existence offered. The long view of the being who had been fully in it, in the dark and the light and the grief and the power and the humiliation and the patronage and the vow held with everything she was across all the ages of the holding. She thought about the dark. She thought about it not with the quality of the being who returned to the painful thing in the way of the traumatized, not with the quality of the wound that had not healed and kept presenting itself to the attention whether the attention wanted it or not, with the quality of the honest reflection of the being who understood that the dark had been the beginning of the most fundamental of her qualities, that the dignity she had carried through everything, through the marriage and the grief and the golden chains and the long opposition to Heracles and the conspiracy and the punishment, had been formed in exactly that place, in the absolute and lightless interior of the Titan, where dignity was the only thing available, and so dignity was what she had become. The dark had made her, not in the simple sense of the suffering that produces the character through the opposition of the difficult, not the simple narrative of the hardship that builds the virtue it tests, in the more fundamental sense of the condition of formation, the place where the quality of her nature had developed in the specific way that the darkness produced, the way that the seed develops in the dark of the soil into the particular quality of what the seed was always going to be, but needed the dark and the pressure and the specific conditions of the underground to become. She thought about the vow. She thought about it with the full and complex quality that the vow deserved, the sacred bond that she had held with everything she was across all the ages of the marriage, the bond held on her side with the absolute completeness of the being whose nature was the holding of the sacred bond, held through the grief and the anger and the humiliation and the conspiracy and the return from the punishment and all the long and complex ages of the divine marriage, that was also the most painful and the most defining relationship of her existence. She had held it, not because the holding had been easy. The holding had been the most difficult thing she had ever done, more difficult than the dark of the Titan's interior, because the interior had been the condition imposed from outside, and the holding of the vow was the condition she had imposed on herself, the condition she renewed every day of every age of her existence, in the quality of the being who understood that the vow was what it was, and that she was the goddess of it, and that the goddess of the thing was the being who most completely embodied the thing. She had held it because it was true, not true in the sense of being correct, not true in the sense of the optimum calculation of the available options, true in the sense of being the expression of what she was, the being whose nature was the sacred bond, the quality whose embodiment was the queen of the gods who held the vow with everything she was, regardless of what the holding cost, because the holding was the most complete expression of what she was and who she was, and the queen of the gods was not the being who became less than what she was, because the cost of being what she was high. She thought about the marriages. She thought about all the marriages she had attended across all the ages of the mortal world, the countless human ceremonies in which the vow was made in the specific quality of the mortal version of the sacred bond, the two people turning toward each other with the full force of their intention to hold what they were establishing between them. She had been present at all of them, not visibly, present in the quality of the domain, the way the sea was present in every wave and the fire was present in every flame. She had felt each one. She had felt each vow with the full quality of the goddess of the sacred bond, receiving the expression of her domain, the quality of the commitment establishing itself between two beings, the particular quality of the moment when the promise was made, and the making of the promise was the beginning of the thing it promised to maintain. She had felt the ones that held, and she had felt the ones that broke, and she had felt the quality of both with the same complete and honest attention, without the preference for the holding that would have been the easy quality, and without the grief for the breaking that would have been the self-indulgent one. She had received them all. The sky was moving toward the evening. She felt the quality of the late afternoon sky above Olympus, the sky in the aspect of her domain, the ordered and the regal sky of the queen rather than the stormy sky of the king, the sky at the quality of the late day, when the light was taking on the particular warmth of the approach of the evening, the particular quality of the sky at the moment before the transition from the full brightness of the day to the quality of the dusk. This was the sky she loved most, not the storm sky of Zeus's thunder or the clear cold sky of the high morning or the night sky of the stars. The late afternoon sky, the sky at the threshold of the transition, the sky that was most completely itself in the quality of the moment before the change, carrying in it the full warmth of the day that was completing itself, and the first intimation of the evening that was arriving. She breathed the air of Olympus. The air of the mountain in the late afternoon had its own quality, the particular quality of the high and the clear and the slightly cooling that came as the sun moved toward the horizon. The air that was the mountain's own air at the time of day, when the mountain was most completely itself, when the quality of the height and the light were in the exact proportion that produced the particular quality of the late afternoon on Olympus. She felt the peacock. He moved at the edge of her awareness in the quality he always moved, the regal and unhurried quality of the creature who was entirely itself wherever it was, who did not perform its nature for any audience, but expressed it with the complete and unconcerned fullness of the thing that knew what it was, and was it without apology or qualification. She felt his presence as she had always felt it, as the natural extension of the quality of her own being expressed in the natural world. The creature that was the most complete external expression of the quality she had developed in the dark. She felt the quality of the whole of what she had been, not in the way of the inventory, not the listing of the episodes and the relationships and the acts and their consequences. In the quality of the whole felt as a whole, the way a life feels when it is felt from the inside of the long view rather than from the inside of any specific moment within it. The quality of the complete range of the experience pressing gently against the awareness in its totality rather than in its particulars. The dark and the light, the island and the marriage, the grief and the patronage, the opposition and the reconciliation, the conspiracy and the chains and the return, all of it. The full and complex and honest range of what the existence of the Queen of the Gods had been across all the ages of the Olympian world. She held it without flinching. This was the quality that was most completely hers. The holding without flinching, the complete and honest reception of what the existence had been, without the softening that would have made it more comfortable and less true. She held the full weight of it with the quality of the being who had always been able to hold the full weight of what was true, who had developed the capacity for that holding in the most complete darkness available, and had never since then lost the capacity. The vow was still the vow. She was still the goddess of the sacred bond, not despite everything, through everything, the quality of the domain more fully and more honestly hers for having been the one who had held it in the most difficult of all possible conditions, the goddess of the vow who had been the most direct and the most personal of all the witnesses to what the violation of the vow was and what it cost. She understood the sacred bond now, in the fullness of the understanding, not the theoretical understanding of the being who presided over a domain from the comfortable distance of the never personally tested, the complete and costly understanding of the being who had been fully in it, who had made the vow and held the vow and felt the vow broken from the inside of the holding, who had received the full quality of what the bond was and what the bond required and what the bond cost when it was held by only one of the two who had made it. This was the understanding that made her the goddess she was, not the power, not the throne, not the peacock and the ordered sky, and the regal quality of the Queen of Olympus. The understanding, the complete and costly and entirely honest understanding of the sacred bond, the understanding that was hers because she had paid for it with everything the existence had cost her. The evening was arriving. She felt the quality of the transition. The late afternoon sky moving through the threshold of the dusk, the light changing in the way of the sky at its most transitional, the particular quality of the colors of the sky at the moment of the change from the day to the evening. The sky above Olympus was the most beautiful at this moment. The particular combination of the remaining warmth of the afternoon and the first coolness of the approaching dark, the colors of the transition present in the quality of the high and clear mountain air. She sat in her throne. She sat in the quality of the evening, the Queen of the Gods in her place beside the throne of the king, the divine court moving in its Olympian quality around her, the sky above in the aspect of her domain at the moment of its most beautiful expression. She sat in the full quality of what she was, the queen who had been through the full range of what the existence offered and who was still here, still the queen, still entirely herself. Entirely herself. This was the thing that the long existence had given her that could not have been given any other way. the completeness of the self that had been through the full range and had held itself through all of it. The quality of the being who knew what they were because they had been what they were in every possible condition, and had found in every condition the same essential quality at the center. The dignity that formed in the dark, it was there still, it had always been there, it would always be there. The quality that was more fundamental than the throne, and more fundamental than the vow, and more fundamental than any specific episode in the full and complex range of the existence of the Queen of the Gods. The quality that was simply her. The essential and irreducible quality of Hera, present in the dark of the Titan's interior, and present on the throne of Olympus, and present in the golden chains suspended between the earth and the sky, present now. Present in the quality of the queen sitting in her throne in the evening light of Olympus, with the peacock at the edge of her awareness, and the divine court around her, and the sky above in the aspect of her domain at the threshold of the evening. She breathed. The air of the late afternoon mountain moved through her in the quality of the evening breath, the particular compound quality of the Olympian air at this time of day, carrying in it the warmth of the completed day, and the first coolness of the arriving night, and the particular quality of the high clear air that was the air of her domain. She felt the quality of the world below. She felt the mortal world in its evening quality, the quality of the settlements and the cities and the fields and the roads, with the day completing itself, and the mortals moving through the evening with the quality of the living at the end of the working day. And somewhere in the quality of the mortal evening, a marriage was being made. Two people turning toward each other in the quality of the full commitment. The sacred bond being established in the modest and specific quality of the mortal ceremony. She was present. She was present in the quality of the domain. The way she was always present in every expression of the thing she was the goddess of. The way the sea was present in every wave. She received the vow with the full quality of her attention. The complete and unhurried attention of the goddess of the sacred bond, receiving the expression of her domain, the commitment being made received by the being whose nature was the commitment. She held it. She held it in the quality of the Queen of the Gods, holding all the vows of all the mortal world across all the ages of the world's existence, completely, with the full weight of her understanding of what the vow was and what it required, with the quality of the being whose understanding of the sacred bond was the most complete and the most costly understanding available. The evening deepened. The sky above Olympus moved through the quality of the dusk, the last light of the day collecting at the horizon in the particular quality of the sky's most regal expression. The colors of the ending day present in the quality of the high and clear mountain air. She was the queen of this sky. She was the queen of the sacred bond, and the protector of the vow, and the goddess of the marriage, and the being whose existence had been the most complete and the most costly and the most honest expression of the thing she was the goddess of. She was the queen. She was still here, and somewhere below in the quality of the evening world, someone was lying down in the quality of the rest, the body settling into the warmth of the held and the cared for, the quality of the one who was held by another, in the particular warmth of the bond, that was the mortal expression of the most sacred thing in the world. She held them in the quality of her attention, not intrusively. The way the goddess of the sacred bond was always present in the expression of the sacred bond, the way the sea was present in every wave. She held the quality of the bond between them with the complete and honest understanding of the being who knew what the bond was and what it required and what it gave. She held the sky above them, the regal evening sky of the Queen of the Gods, the sky at the threshold of the night, the sky in its most beautiful and most complete expression. The colors of the dusk still present at the horizon, the first stars beginning their appearance in the deepening quality of the dark above, the particular quality of the evening sky, that was neither the full brightness of the day nor the complete dark of the night, but the threshold between them, the threshold that was always hers. She breathed, and the sky held the quality of the evening, and the bond held between the sleeping ones in the warmth of the night, and the queen of the gods sat in her throne on the mountain above the world, with the full weight of the long existence settled around her, in the quality of the complete, and the sovereign, and the entirely herself, still here, still the queen, still holding everything she had always held, the vow and the bond and the sky and the long and honest knowledge of what the sacred thing was and what it cost and what it gave and why, across all the ages and all the pain and all the complexity of the most fully lived of all divine lives, it was worth the holding. The sky is above you, the queen is in her place, the bond holds, it has always held, it always will.